All right, we're gonna prep everyone's video up. I'm not the host anymore. All right.
All right. Are we live?
Yeah, we're live.
Okay.
We are
Restream
live.
doing its thing.
Give me a host, buddy.
Okay. Cool. I'm gonna black out my video.
I think we should be all right.
You live, my man?
Yes, we are. And I'm just checking one thing. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Conversations Cafe. I'm your host, Carl Evans, Senior Director of Operations at Hope of the Day. And Conversations Cafe is our weekly live stream program dedicated to talking about different intersections of mental health within our community and lives. And this episode is centered around a form of activism and making an impact in our community with a guest who's actually been on Conversations Cafe before. And a lot of the conversations that you've seen this guest on before has been part of a larger discussion we've had along the intersections of mental health and systemic racism. And we plan and book our shows out sort of weeks in advance. And unfortunately, it's kind of unfortunate that while we're talking about the things we're going to talk about tonight, uh, talking about systemic racism, which is always important and relevant to talk about at any given time, is hypercharged again this week in what has already been a very active summer of uprisings in response to America and its relationship to race and law enforcement, and into broader topics around how we as a nation sort of circle around concepts of race when it comes to our institutions and our social structures. And we're sitting in the midst of a pandemic, and when you think about sort of COVID-19, think about the way it sort of shaped and impacted us as a society and economically. If you think about the mindset that wherever you might go, any sort of human interaction space that you could occupy in years past, you need to be omnipresent or hyper vigilant that the surfaces you touch, the people you're coming into contact with, physically or just in the sort of close proximity, they could expose you to very lethal consequences. And you have to have this hyper engaged mindfulness. And the shifts in our society have taken away your agency to interact socially, professionally, for leisure, for fun, for well-being. Every asset or every feature of your life is impacted by this pandemic. And you and I are living in real time in a society where we've seen a very disparate reality. For a lot of people right now, there is an experience that they're having in which millions of people are suffering physically with the illness and dying. There are millions of people who are suffering economically because they've lost access to their work spaces, or their entire industries have basically been disrupted. And yet, for even more millions more, even if you find the privilege of having your job or economic situation be somewhat stable and you haven't had a major impact health-wise from the virus in terms of your immune system, we're all psychologically impacted by the strain and the deep, intensive emotional impact of dealing with the pandemic. And we call that psychological injury. We're all joined in that trauma. But I'm saying it's disparate because in the same breath that millions of us are in very much real time having these experiences, these intensive, painful, sometimes experiences, there are still others who don't believe the pandemic exists, who think that what's going on isn't that big of a deal, who just want to return to a normalcy. Um, their actions are indifferent to people who are put at risk. Not even just their own well-being is put at risk, but maybe workers or people who provide services for them to be able to maintain their sense of normalcy, and they're utterly indifferent to it. And we have these very disjointed responses that have given us this disparate reality in America, where it's you can measure by some states do X, Y, and Z, and other states do that. It can be broken down by county and city to city. Even within your own family or friend network, there are some of you who have taken certain actions and others who are maybe indifferent or blasé about it. And even though the reality of the virus, when it hits, and that's all there is to it in terms of like, you don't get to negotiate that away. It's a very real thing. That's not the way. We don't have this uniform response. And it doesn't have to be like this. We didn't have to be in a place where people needed to return to work in the form of a pandemic and all that kind of stuff. And the reason that we have these disparate realities, we don't have a sort of healthy process where we could use the vast resources that we have to sort of make a cushion to deal with this crisis. It's a crisis, and there's ways. We didn't have to go into worst case scenario the way some areas of America and are. But it all boils down to a sort of a willpower and people coming to a mutual agreement that we need to think about and work towards the well-being of all of us and our peers. And that didn't happen. And one of the weird things that I think about and why I'm talking about COVID right now in the face of things like systemic racism is that there are a lot of people who are, think they call themselves sort of anti-maskers, or people who think these are a hoax, or people who fully believe in the virus and totally think it's lethal, but also feel like it's time to sort of not quarantine, not distance, get back to opening up schools and places of business and get back to a sense of normal. And they just can't endure or are tired of enduring the disciplines and the inconveniences that come with complying with trying to stamp out the mass spread of this virus. And that's where I see a direct correlation to a topic that continually gets brought to the forefront of the American consciousness and human consciousness, and then sort of subsides, and that's the way racism plays into our society. And, what if COVID was the new normal? What if the way we live now was something that had to be tolerated and dealt with for weeks and months and years on, that there was no vaccine? How many people would go along with this disjointed way of dealing with COVID before they said, all right, we need to make a change. We need to figure out a way to sort of not have this be such a risk to all the community. How many people would have to die before enough of the public came to a consensus that we can't have this be this disjointed way of dealing with it, this indifference? We can't let this be the status quo. Well, when I think of the dysfunctional response to COVID, I see that same response in the history of things like slavery and Jim Crow, and our response to the treatment of indigenous people and the persecution and abuse of people, gender identity and sexual orientation, the indifference to the impoverished. That these are large scale issues that touch every corner of our country, issues which vast majorities can agree the topic itself is legitimate, concern that merits resolution or improvement. But when it comes to actual substantive impact, there are only small minorities of people trying to push for change. And as always, there's usually another subgroup of people convinced that they need to resist that change. And an opinion poll might show that 50-50, the nation is split on it. But the truth is that there's really only a third of our population at any one time that's really trying to push to change something or resist the change to something. And the other 2/3 remain passively tolerating the problem. They may not like the issue, they may not agree that the issue persists, but they tolerate it. They sort of stand by. And when we talk about great change, especially when it comes to social and political issues in America, the only course of history for actual things getting better is when enough folks who are in that sort of tolerant, indifferent, passive middle ground decide that they're going to stop abiding the status quo and want to change, enjoying acting towards it. And Hope for the Day, for instance, we do proactive suicide prevention. We do not do crisis response. Our education is designed to disrupt the escalation of a problem. We strive to build tools for people to take action for themselves and to become agents of impact for their peers. And when we look at the protests around the George Floyd murders and Breonna Taylor and places where there's these intensive volatile conflicts for people who want to see things change, and of course there's people who want to resist that change, there's still the vast general population of our communities that kind of just sits in the middle and says, well, it's messed up, but they sort of stand by. And our hope with proactive suicide prevention is to try to empower as many people as possible to invest in taking their own mental health seriously and taking action. And that's not a small jump into talking about other factors that impact our mental health, such as situations in our community. And tonight, the topic is called Christmas in August, because we're focusing on something that connects to the toxic reality of the very traumatizing effect of poverty. And systemic racism connects to people who are disenfranchised economically, professionally. But it's not enough to just recognize there's a problem, and it's not enough to just blandly say, well, take action or vote or something. It's important to try and really visualize and focus on what does activism look like? What does better look like? And tonight we're basically zeroing in on one specific topic and one specific initiative that's a precise example of what we can do in our communities to really make a dent and try to connect and make change beyond just, posting about it or something. And so we're joined tonight by a very special guest, Mr. Christopher LeMark of Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health. And we're going to be talking about the Poverty is Violent food collection initiative that has been kicking off since the start of August. And its goal, of course, is to provide food relief to scores and scores of individuals, families who have been impacted by the pandemic and the economic upturn. And it also has a bigger goal of sort of rallying community to look out for one another. And there's a few different facets to it. But let's first get our guest of honor tonight on. Friend of Conversations Cafe, Christopher LeMark. Let's make sure we can hear you and see you.
Hello.
Chris.
How are you? Yes, sir. How's it going?
Thank you so much for joining us. You've been a very, very busy man. We've been seeing you covered in a lot of media, from TV to online spots to print. Chicago Tribune just dropped a great article on you as well as your other appearances. And how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. A little tired, but that comes with the territory. But I'm equally as pumped and excited about this weekend. So I'm gonna get some good rest tonight so I can be ready.
And let's spell it out for folks real quick. What is this weekend? Because we said Christmas in August. What is
Sure.
That's what's going down?
So back in June, we started an initiative called Poverty is Violent, because we wanted to highlight the tremendous issue with food deserts in the South Side and also food insecurity. And we also wanted to highlight the fact that the poverty rate was really high here in Chicago. So we started this initiative to feed people, just a random act of giving on June 13th. And then that evolved into something bigger. After we worked with Mariano's to feed 1,000 families, and partnering with Sip of Hope and Hope for the Day, like to make sure we spread the word North Side as well. And so it evolved to this thing called the People's Food Drive. And as we began to hear so much in the news about systemic racism and all the different stuff that was happening, we wanted to take things a step further and really encourage the people. So with the People's Food Drive, we said, why not make it Christmas in August? Because we know that it's going to be very different for people when it comes to December. And we're going to know how bad COVID impacted our community and country from a financial standpoint after the election, but more so the top of next year. And so we said, hey, how can we bring some hope? How can we bring some form of healing and just something that people can smile about and serve together as a city while uniting people that would never come to the South Side? And so we wanted to do Christmas in August a 3-day weekend, 3 days of giving. And so tomorrow we start our volunteer rally and our service day where we all come together and we'll pack and unload the trucks and put all the food stations together. And each station represents a different neighborhood on the south side that is considered a food desert. So station 1 may be West Inglewood, and then Inglewood and Roseland and so forth and so on, right? And so letting people know that, hey, you're packing for the Roseland area or the Auburn Gresham area, right? And then when it comes to Saturday and Sunday, those are the days that we're going to deliver to the different nursing homes. And also we have people who can drive up and grab their box and we can bless the family. And so 3 days of giving, that is Christmas in August. And what I'm most excited about is that we are putting food in boxes with beautiful ribbons on top, because we are not feeding the needy, we are gifting the eager, because people are eager to get back to some sense of normalcy. And that is Christmas in August, the People's Food Drive.
See, and we touched on a lot of beautiful things there, because in my little opening thing, which, we're talking about, obviously we're sitting in the wake of some violence and volatility that's gone on in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And it's not a small jump to talk about just being able to recognize a problem doesn't give us the pathway to make things better. And building this network, this coalition that it took for you to make this a reality is actually a very specific, goal and a piece of the framework of what real change looks like. You mentioned in there that Hope of the Day, we wanted to support this amazing initiative any way we could. And
Right.
Sip of Hope as a community space, well, we wanted to be connected to the community, and it has a number of those initiatives, but you touched on a really important part there. Systemic racism and all of its features, one of its most insidious and subtle features is that sort of virtue of organized and casual and social segregation.
Yes.
Like Chris Webber was on TV last night talking about, if you can't see a problem, you can't, really recognize or embrace it. And one of the ways that a lot of pain and injustice for a lot of folks, especially people of color, has persisted is because it's out of sight, out of mind. And
Right.
I think that's manifested in Chicago by, it's a northern city, but it's a hyper segregated city in a lot of ways. And so a powerful initiative like yours that's on the south side, in a lot of people's minds, even a Chicagoan's minds or someone elsewhere, that could be like, okay, well, that's a Black people only thing.
Right.
This just being like the hardcore reality. And Sip of Hope is located in a diverse neighborhood, but it's on the north side. And so that's indicatively going to read as not Black. That's just the way it is, right?
That's true. Facts.
So I love the way that, us connecting is trying to build a bridge across a very real social and cultural bridge that was enshrined long before any of us got there. And it's important for folks who are contributing, and we've gotten tremendous contributions at Sip of Hope in the Logan Square neighborhood that you're bringing to your initiative, right? And that's a real one-to-one. That's not lip service. That's not somebody just posting on social media. That is people being able to connect with an issue where they may not see it directly in their neighborhood, but it does build that connection. And you brought up Sip and Savor as another example of turning our community spaces into points of activism. Like they're great for business. You need business, but creating these sort of spotlights where people can feel connected further builds a coalition, because the amount of people who come through a Sip and Savor or Sip of Hope are coming from all walks of life, right? And there could be people who are there from a space, a mindset in a space where they may not be able to have appreciated or connected with the reality that there are folks who could be in severe need of support, and food security is not guaranteed for them. And we're not talking, and not to be over aggressive, but we're not talking about an abstract concept of another continent away. This is a couple of blocks from them, 5 or 10 minute drive or a train ride, right? So as you've been building this whole project, talk about for tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be where all the volunteers come from. Who are the people volunteering with you?
So that's a good question. So we have people coming from all over Chicagoland. So we have, you know, baby boomers. Sorry about that. Baby boomers who are Caucasian, who are 70, who are 60 years old, husband and wives, couples, families, people that live in Lake Forest, people that live in Gurney, people that live in Lakeview, right? It's people coming from all over the city, Hispanic, white, Black, students, white students. And I'm highlighting those different cultures for a reason. It's because when you think about the People's Food Drive, we wanted it to be for us and by us, right? But I didn't mean that just for Black people. I wanted to create something where everyone in the midst of all of this chaos can remove their bias, and then come from out of their comfort zone, and then literally come serve next to somebody that you wouldn't even talk to because of look, I'm not even gonna say like it's quiet and it's soft. Like Chicago has been segregated for as long as I can remember, and long before that. And the manifestation of what that looks like is when you see all the different bridges up downtown that separates north from south, right? And so that is the physical manifestation of what it's like to live in this city. In Chicago, I feel like a Black man. I feel very much like a Black man everywhere I go. And I'm sure I'm not the only one. And so I want to remove that as much as we can by uniting people, putting people in spaces where, look, if you can serve next to somebody packing food, first of all, poverty is violent, but food is love. And I say that over and over again because when you think about food, food is something special, something to be shared, something to be adored. It's an event, right? It's the ordering process, or even before that, where are we going? Everyone's talking about where we're going. Everyone's sharing menus so you can figure out what you're going to eat before you get there. Everyone's talking about budget. And then when you get there, it's like, wow, let's order. Let's bring out the appetizers, and then the main feast of it all, and then the drinks, but the laughter and the unity, and then just loving on each other. It is such an intimate thing. So how intimate is it for you to sit with people you don't know for hours? Packing these bags, you have no choice but to talk to one another, right? So it's several things in this. I wanted people to stand next to someone that they would not normally sit next to and talk and work, and you're all doing the same thing. So that's what I'm excited about, them, like all these different cultures blending in together.
Yeah, and thank you. That is exactly, right on the money, and I think it's very important for our audience to hear that, because another way that saving the whole college dissertation, one of the other insidious ways that things like systemic racism works to perpetuate differences and space and gaps is that it compartmentalizes us, and it creates the illusion that we're only supposed to stay within these sort of like cultural boxes. And well, it's important for a sense of agency that you can make space for you and people who recognize and identify the same as you. If that's being done by your own volition, that's one thing. But when there's a sort of communal institutional reinforcement to sort of segregate and separate people, that's when it's problematic. And that's something that exists, that through casual and formal ways, a lot of us as peoples are compartmentalized by race, by the academic illusion of race, and that's another conversation. But the fact is that doing great acts like these does build a connection, and this also breaks down walls, breaks down stigmas, helps expose people to the realities around them, which is, understanding is the key to really making a lot of changes. You can tell people a lot of things, you can give people a lot of stats, you can put pretty graphs up and have emotional, heart-wrenching videos. But the minute you can establish understanding with somebody, that's going to move worlds. That's going to start to change things in the mind and the social policy. And it's only a small step before getting the willpower to change something institutionally. And one of the coolest things about your project is back to building it around food, food relief, again, is something that I think also helps expose some realities that maybe it's the privilege of growing up in a sort of American cultural society that makes us think that, Americans may not always be, there are such a thing as homeless individuals and things like that. But we're kind of conditioned to believe that when it comes to things like food security, that's not one of America's problems. That, invading hordes of bandits and wastelands of people dying of famine is not a thing that's in America, but that's not the only forms of a lack of food security. And
exactly,
you focusing on this reality, the fact is that someone can have an automotive vehicle, can have clothes on their back, could have a cell phone, but be coming home to an empty fridge is something that doesn't inherently click out for a lot of people. You don't necessarily, and being homeless is another way of ending up in a place where there is no food security. But that might be easier for people to appreciate than someone who is a parent and they have a job and they're coming home to no ability to feed themselves or their loved ones because that's just the way the bills stacked up and they weren't able to stretch, things in the sort of the reality of the economics of our society. They weren't able to stretch it. And I think it's such an important way to push these conversations forward is not just by telling people, you should feel ashamed about this and the other, but now this is a way you can get your hands into it and get involved.
Right.
Chris, we wanted to really make this really focus on the event, and we've been spending a lot of time, and your whole coalition that you've helped build has spent a lot of time trying to encourage driving people to give, food, the specific lists you've built and things like that. But I'm wondering, what if somebody is hearing this right now, and maybe they're going to catch this, tomorrow morning or something. Did they miss the boat, or is there a way that they can still support the Poverty is Violent initiative, even if it's maybe not being able to help pack meals? What can people do to support, support the cause, like tangibly support the cause?
Sure. So if they are in Chicago, they can still go to the website, which is chhhamh.com, or you can do coffeehiphopandmentalhealth.com. And you can just scroll down and you can sign up to be a volunteer if you live in Chicago, because this is the first weekend, right? We're not done. We're going to take a small break and come back and do a free farmers market in the first week of October. So we're going to continue to gift people, right? And so, but they can also, whether you live in Chicago or out of state, you can just text donate.feedshy to 77948. And that is donate.feedshy. You can just text that to 77948. And you can constantly do that. Or you can go to the website and you can buy merch. We're using everything. We have a short film that we created called 6453. 6453 is underneath our logo. And 6453 represents the address where I came from, where I lived in the food desert in the 80s, where I suffered food insecurity. I was abused and neglected by not being able to eat some days. And so without that story, without my history and everything that's happening in Chicago and across the country, there will be no Coffee Hip Hop Mental Health, and there will be no initiative to help deal with food insecurity in the South Side. So this thing won't stop. You can always donate your time, donate your dollars. You can get a group of friends and family members together and come down and work with us. This thing just would never stop. And as you see on the screen, that is a short film that we wanted to talk about what it's like to normalize therapy. And we talk about the food drive in this 20-minute film. And we're selling this film for $20. We're selling merchandise. We're selling coffee. We're doing whatever we can do to bring funds so we can continue to purchase products so we can continue to feed families. Because the reality is, pre-COVID, there was 550,000 people in Chicago that was under the poverty line. That has been exasperated since COVID has hit. And so I'm sure we're close to 800,000 people struggling here in the city of Chicago. So people can continue to show us love by, again, volunteering, donating, buying merchandise. But not even just that. If you don't have money to do anything, you can just tell people about it. You can spread the news. If people actually need food in Chicago and they need to pick up a box, they can go to the website, click on the tab and click pick up, and they can schedule what they can drive up and pick up this weekend. So we just here to help people. And if you're handicapped and you don't have a car, reach out to us. And, go on that same site, click pick up, and let us know that you're handicapped or you don't have a car, and we will deliver it to you this weekend. And so we're doing whatever we can to serve. As we're asking for more support, as soon as we get it, we push it right back out to the community.
And that's so critical. This is action. This is using your dollars, but it's also a way of seeing your dollars in action directly. And that's important, I think, especially because, times are tough for everybody. So people maybe might feel like they need to, or should, probably naturally can feel like they've got to be a little more cautious about where they're putting, the revenue. And that, you can't blame somebody for that. Things seem unstable. But
not mad at that. Yep. Not mad at that at all.
That doesn't change that too many Americans have no problem, even with their own financial hardships. And maybe that's the wrong phrasing. So many Americans, even with their own financial struggles or economic uncertainties, are happy to give and do give. And that's important. And when we talk about this initiative, this is another opportunity where you can give of your time and energy, if that's that has its own value, goes without saying. If that's not something you may be able to do, especially with the realities around COVID, giving financially is another way to help support what is also something people should know, not a one and done. Right now, the food relief initiative is one project of a number of initiatives that are under this umbrella of Poverty is Violent. And that's another thing to understand, is that if you feel like you've come a little short, I don't know if I could get involved right now, maybe financially you can give right now. Well, keep your eye open, because with the potential of the farmers market in October, you can sort of prepare, maybe get your head set to volunteer, maybe get some food collections ready to contribute. And the point that I want to sort of drive home on tonight is, just as I said in my opening words, this is about activism. We saw professional athletes, a number of professional athletes, follow this suit of thinking this week. We basically need to be done talking. The talking has been happening, and it's important, and we keep it going, but we need to now see doing, and there have been generations of people doing. And we're sort of in another sort of zeitgeist kind of a moment where we're now looking, our generations are now looking for the doing points. And being able to join in Christmas in August is a way of doing, because mental health is every facet of our lives. And when we talk about systemic racism, for a lot of people, it's up in front of their faces. And you don't have to have been a bigot. You don't have to have a prejudice bone in your body to maintain systemically racist systems. But it's not good enough to just say, well, I don't like it. What we're looking for when we talk about activism is we want anti-racist initiatives. We want people who want to be active in improving their community. Standing idly by may not have a negative contribution, but no positive contribution just leaves space for the negative, to perpetuate itself. And so
that's true.
If you're listening and watching right now, or listening in the coming weeks, when you see an individual like Chris, you see the work that Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health is doing, that's a form of activism that you can get in on. And we hope that this is a forum that can inspire you as well. We want you to take our education, and at the end of a Hope of the Day education, we encourage you to go out and find ways to press the conversation in your community. Chris has found a way to press and take action in his community to make it better, to be an agent of impact. And one of the biggest takeaways we hope you can have tonight is wondering, what can I do to use my voice, my energies? And the scale is irrelevant. It just has to be something. It can, and before we wind off, Chris, I want to make sure we give you a place to sort of just share some of your closing thoughts for the night.
Sure. Thank you. Well, like first and foremost, I really appreciate you all at Hope for the Day, Sip of Hope. I'm telling you, it means a lot when partnering organizations come together because we can do a lot more. It's a close to 3 million people in this city, and one organization cannot do all the work by itself. So I am very appreciative of this community partnership between Hope for the Day and Sip of Hope and Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health, and obviously us on the South Side with Sip and Savor with Trez. So that's been super encouraging because, like I said, you need partners. It strengthens you to continue to go when you know you have support because you're not the only one waving the flag. So thank you. In closing, as it relates to this conversation, I just want people to step outside of themselves for a moment because I feel like someone in the city of Chicago, a very thriving city, we're part of Illinois, a very thriving state, despite the debt and all the different challenges. There's no way in this city people should be starving. People should be food insecure. I believe someone is selfish. The fact that actually exists. It's food. If nothing else, it's food, right? And so when we tell people to sponsor a family for $40, we blow $40, $50, $60 on random foolish stuff every single day. Every day. And so I'm encouraging people to step outside of themselves for a moment. If you're going grocery shopping and you have an extra few bucks, buy some dry goods that's on our list, put it to the side. And if we don't use it this weekend, we'll use it for October, right? And I want people to, to think about that. I want people to also say, hey, look, if I got a few hours out the week, find a way to serve your neighborhood. Don't just serve us as we're serving the people, but find something to do in your neighborhood. If you see trash on the ground, pick it up. If you know your neighbor is struggling, help him or her out. There's several ways that we can serve our city collectively. And I just want people to be open. I want people to step completely outside of themselves. Some of the things that are the most encouraging to me as it relates to this food drive, when I see if the food box is $40, but I'm seeing people give $5, $10, $20, $25, $33. That means you didn't have enough, but you gave what you can. You gave $33, but it's $40. Those dollars mean a lot to me. They mean it more to me than the $100 we're receiving, the $1,000 we're receiving. And I'm not saying those dollars don't matter, but when you know somebody is sacrificing and giving something that they cannot afford, that encourages me. So I'm saying that we all can help. We all can help. And it's not just about money. It's about our time. It's about speaking to people in our neighborhood that we normally wouldn't speak to. It's about giving somebody a hug when we can again, right? It's about just loving on our community and then loving on ourselves. I think being honest with who we are and what has happened. And I'm telling people as it relates to the Kenosha situation and what's happening there, the one thing I think about all the time, are we not thinking about the children? Are we not thinking about the children when we burn down property, when we fight, when we shoot, when we do all of these things? Are we not thinking about the children? Because the children are watching, they are feeling, they are receiving all of this stuff that we're putting out there that is wrong. And I want people to please consider the children because we are infecting them. Yes, infecting them with stuff that we have already been tainted by, and we don't want them to carry the same burdens and the same pain. So that's the best I can close with is if we can be selfless, if we can give more of our time, if we have more than somebody, I'm asking that we just step outside of ourselves Do more. Please do more. Please, I beg you, do more for yourself, for your community, and please think about the children.
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Chris.
You're welcome, sir.
I want to, and that's really, we don't need, that's a good way to put a button in this tonight. Just sort of closing out with a quote here that I think drives home, the theme here is about activism and ways in which you can get active. And Hope of the Day has an event coming up on October 8th called the Conversation Summit. It's free with an RSVP, and it's designed to inspire and instigate the thought process for how you can take action on mental health in your communities. And we hope to see you there. You'll see promotions about it. But based, with the type of great work that Chris has done through the Poverty is Violent initiative and the type of work that Hope of the Day is always striving to do to get people activated in their communities, I was thinking about this quote to end tonight, and it's an interesting quote. It's from a woman named Carrie Chapman Catt, and I don't expect anyone to, unless you're hardcore into this kind of stuff. Carrie Chapman Catt is a woman who was an instrumental figure in the women's suffrage in the vote, and she would also go on to be the first president or form the League of Women Voters. And in modern era, she would be, well, yeah, that sounds like a great advocate, someone you'd want to quote from. However, in the modern era where we understand human beings, especially in the past, can be flawed individuals, she's an imperfect story. She was an ardent fighter for women's vote and women's rights and things like that. But she also, when she was younger and earlier in her public career, was a nativist, not friendly to newly arriving immigrants from Mediterranean Catholic countries, and no friend of African Americans, to say the least. But over the course of 20 to 30 years of activism from the 20s into the 1940s, as she put herself directly in front of communities that needed support and needed help in terms of rallying women to get activated in voting, her views dramatically changed on her prejudices. And that's why I thought it was an interesting quote, especially here. And she had this thing that said, to the wrongs that need resistance, to the right that need women, to the wrongs that need resistance, to the rights that need assistance, to the future in the distance, give yourselves. And that, I think, is a very salient message that I want us to go home with tonight, is that each one of you who are listening now or in futures ahead have the ability to use your voice and your body and your energies to be an agent of impact. And the problems that exist in our society today, the things that are volatile and dominating our social media, are not hopeless. They're not things that, even though right now they make you feel powerless, they're not insurmountable. They're difficult, they're extremely hard, but their solutions are obtainable. And it's through the very arduous pathway of human activism, of taking a stand, not just with your voice, but trying to assert and advocate for institutional changes, be that legislatively or socially, just changing the mindsets of those around you. And so with that, I want to thank Christopher LeMark, Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health, the Poverty is Violent initiative. It's going to be an amazing, emotional, and moving weekend. Please follow up on any of the social media information if you want to get involved. We'll be putting that content wherever you can find this live stream. I want to thank the entire production team of Conversations Cafe, Rick Kosowski, Mike Vinopol, and Vicky Cisnet. And with that, we bid you a wonderful good night. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night, Carl.
Later.
Have a good night,
Chris
Tim.
LeMark, the founder of Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health. We are excited because we're getting close to gifting 10,000 families here on the south side of Chicago. And look, it's going to be an amazing time. It's Christmas in August. So this is how you can help. You can help by purchasing merchandise, coffee, right? Our own dark roast. Or you can do something very, very simple. All you have to do is text donate donate.feedshy to 77948. Again, text donate.feedshy to 77948. $40 per family, or you can sponsor many families, okay? We need your help, we need your support. It is Christmas in August. Let's make it happen. This is the People's Food Drive.